Merry Christmas and welcome to our tea party. We are so glad that you decided to join us today. Our theme is a cup of Christmas tea. We hope you have your tea steeped and your tasties set before you and are ready to begin today's program. Today's featured tea is Winter's Dream. It is a wonderful blend from Tranquility Tea Room in Waynesboro. Relax and enjoy the flavors of mint, chocolate, and a touch of spice in this comforting black loose leaf tea as we read our first story, A Cup of Christmas Tea by Tom Haig.
The log was in the fireplace, all spiced and set to burn. At last the yearly Christmas race was in the clubhouse turn. The cards were in the mail, all the gifts beneath the tree, and 30 days reprieve till Visa could catch up with me. And though smug satisfaction seemed the order of the day, something still was nagging me and would not go away. A week before, I got a letter from my old great aunt. It read, "Of course I'll understand completely if you can't. But if you find you have some time, how wonderful it would be if we could have a little chat and share a cup of Christmas tea." She'd had a mild stroke that year, which crippled her left side. Though housebound now, my folks had said it hadn't hurt her pride. They said she'd love to see you. What a nice thing it would be for you to go and maybe have a cup of Christmas tea. But boy, I didn't want to go. Oh, what a bitter pill to see an old relation and how far she'd gone downhill. I remembered her as vigorous, as funny and as bright. I remembered Christmas Eves when she regaled us half the night. I didn't want to risk all that. I didn't want the pain. I didn't need to be depressed. I didn't need the strain. And what about my brother? Why not him? She's his aunt too. I thought I had it justified. But then, before I knew, the reasons not to go I so painstakingly had built were cracking wide and crumbling in an acid rain of guilt. I put on boots and cap and gloves, shame stinging every pore, and armed with squeegee, sand, and map, I went out my front door. I drove in from the suburbs to the older part of town. The pastels of the newer homes gave way to gray and brown. I had the disembodied feeling as the car pulled up and stopped beside the wooden house that held the Christmas cup. How I got up to her door, I really couldn't tell. I watched my hand rise up and press the button of the bell. I waited, aided by my nervous rocking to and fro, and just as I was thinking I should turn around and go, I heard the rattle of the china in the hutch against the wall. The triple beat of 2 feet and a crutch came down the hall. The clicking of the door latch and the sliding of the bolt, and a little swollen struggle popped it open with a jolt. She stood there pale and tiny, looking fragile as an egg. I forced myself from staring at the brace that held her leg. And though her thick bifocals seemed to crack and spread her eyes, their milky and refracted depths lit up with young surprise. Come in, she laughed the words. She took me by the hand, and all my fears dissolved away, as if by her command. We went inside, and then, before I knew how to react, before my eyes and ears and nose, was Christmas past, live, intact. The scent of candied oranges, of cinnamon and spice, the antique wooden soldiers in their military line, the porcelain nativity I'd always loved so much, the Dresden and the crystal I'd been told I mustn't touch. My spirit fairly bolted like a child out of class and danced among the ornaments of calico and glass. Like magic, I was 6 again, deep in a Christmas spell, steeped in the million memories the boy inside knew well. And here among old Christmas cards, so lovingly displayed, a special place of honor for the ones we kids had made. And there beside her rocking chair, the center of it all, my great Aunt stood and said how nice it was I'd come to call. I sat and rattled on about the weather and the flu. She listened very patiently, then smiled and said, "What's new?" Thoughts and words began to flow. I started making sense. I lost the phony breeziness I use when I get tense. She was still passionately interested in everything I did. She was positive, encouraging, like when I was a kid. Simple generalities still sent her into fits. She demanded the specifics, the particulars, the bits. We talked about the limitations that she'd had to face. She spoke with utter candor and with humor and good grace. Then, defying the reality of crutch and straightened knee, on wings of hospitality, she flew to brew the tea. I sat alone with feelings that I hadn't felt in years. I looked around at Christmas through a thick, hot blur of tears. And the candles and the holly she'd arranged on every shelf, the impossibly good cookies she still somehow baked herself. But these rich, tactile memories became quite pale and thin when measured by the Christmas my great aunt kept deep within. Her body halved and nearly spent, but my great aunt was whole. I saw a Christmas miracle, the triumph of a soul. The triple beat of 2 feet and a crutch came down the hall, the rattle of the china in the hutch against the wall. She poured 2 cups, she smiled, and then she handed one to me, and then we settled back and had a cup of Christmas tea. And that was A Cup of Christmas Tea by Tom Haig. I think everybody will agree with me that the story was a truly wonderful story. Now the next part of our tea party is to take a look at something else that was in our tea kit, and that is the scone. Today's scones provided by Tranquility Tea House are their gingerbread scone and their ever popular cranberry orange scone. But what do you know about scones? Where did they come from? Who started making them first? Let's take a look at the history of the scone.
A delightful addition to the tea party is the scone. But what is the correct pronunciation of the word, and where did scones come from? How you pronounce the word scone is largely dependent on where you grew up. When in Scotland, Northern Ireland, or Northern England, pronounce scone as scone to rhyme with swan. And when in the Midlands, Southern Ireland, or Southern England, pronounce it as scone to rhyme with stone. If you just so happen to be from the village of Scone in Scotland, then you may even pronounce the word as scoon. In America, we almost exclusively use the scone pronunciation. The anonymous poem, I Asked the Maid in Dulcet Tone, hints at the different pronunciations. I asked the maid in dulcet tone to order me a buttered scone. The silly girl has been and gone and ordered me a buttered scone. Although scones are connected traditionally with England, Scotland, and Ireland, nobody knows which country invented it. However, the first known mention of a scone that was printed is from the translation of the Aeneid, written in 1513 by a Scottish poet named Gavin Douglas. The Aeneid is an epic poem originally written in Latin by the ancient Roman poet Virgil between 29 and 19 BC. It tells the legendary story of Aeneas, a Trojan who traveled to Italy, where he became the ancestor of the Romans. The word scone is in chapter 3, line 15. The flour scones were set in, by and by, with other messes. Sin braid trenchers did they fill and charge, with wild scrabs and other fruits large. A Scottish quick bread, scones were originally made with oats and griddle baked. Today's version is more often made with flour and baked in the oven. Scones were originally round and flat instead of the modern, bulky, round shape. Anna, the 7th Duchess of Bedford, is credited with making scones a fashionable ritual. It was in 1840. She felt a sinking feeling around mid-afternoon, so she ordered the servants to bring some tea and sweetbread, including scones. She was so delighted by this that she ordered it every afternoon, and what now has become an English tradition is the afternoon tea time, precisely at 4 p.m. each day. Scones are still served daily with the traditional clotted cream topping in Britain. Times have changed, though. Scones are no longer just a biscuit that the English serve with afternoon tea. Scones can be found in coffee shops and bakeries all over the world.
As we continue to enjoy our tea today, let's listen to the story, which is a follow-up to our first story, A Cup of Christmas Tea. This second story is A Memory of Christmas Tea, and it was also written by Tom Haig. The Christmas list was growing as my time was running out. I seemed to meet myself in stores and malls. I rushed about. I felt that life was going at an even faster clip, and zip, another shopping day had given me the slip. With empty hands, I headed home, a pile of work in store. I fumbled with my keys beneath the wreath upon the door. I looked around. The tree was trimmed. The stockings were in place. The stage was set, and yet I didn't feel the slightest trace of Christmas in the air. It might as well have been July. The pieces didn't fit together, and I wondered why. I opened up the mail, turned the TV on and off. I listened to my messages and thought about my cough. December afternoons are quick to darken into night. I stumbled to the kitchen and I flicked the switch. The light was blinding for a moment, so I had to shut my eyes, and when I opened them again, they fell to my surprise upon a sight that I had seen so many times before, so often that I hardly even saw it anymore. My great aunt's Christmas china. I had put it on display, exactly as I had for years, upon the very day that all the boxes from the attic always came downstairs. How odd that something so well known should catch me unawares. She'd left the service and her cherished ornaments to me, requesting as her legacy a cup of Christmas tea that I would share with someone else as we had always done. My Christmas promise that I had not kept with anyone. I felt a twinge of guilt for that. Excuses leapt to mind. Both time and opportunities were things I couldn't find. My life was an emergency, a crisis and a race, with problems running after me and at me at a pace that only was accelerating as the years flew by. So if I couldn't stop for tea, I had my reasons why. And then I heard my parents, in my mind, but loud and clear, reminding us to mind our manners. This is once a year. So please be careful at your great aunt's house. And we would leave, all scrubbed within an inch of our young lives, for Christmas Eve. A host of cousins, aunts, and uncles would be coming too. Oh, it was so exciting. It was all that I could do to keep myself from flying. Then we took that final right and pulled up to the wooden house. Activity and light were dancing in the windows, and the laughter of the crowd came floating out upon a sugar cookie scented cloud. Come in, she laughed the words. She took me by the hand, and Christmas Eve began again, as if by her command. The years went by, and phrases such as, "My, how you have grown," became she really shouldn't try to do this all alone. Yet on and on she went, the last to sit, the first to rise. My great aunt with her family in dresses, coats, and ties. Then came her final dinner by the fragrant balsam fir. But Father Time, who claims us all, had quite a time with her. Though delicate and fragile as a fine bone china cup, no matter how he troubled her, she kept on looking up. And when at last she brewed her final cup of Christmas tea, she didn't do it for herself. I know it was for me. I saw her look me in the eye and ask of me, "What's new?" And I remember telling her of all I meant to do. I know that she believed me and believed in me, in spite of times that I had failed her, as I nearly had that night. I'd taken her for granted as I grew into my prime, and now my old great aunt had lost the luxury of time. I didn't know that this would be our final cup of tea. I only knew that my great aunt was listening to me. She listened so that I would never choose to waste my days by going through the motions in a dim, unfeeling haze. She listened, spending down her last reserves of inner strength, that I might never settle for self-pitying at length, or hide behind my busyness, or use my hurts and fears to justify the compromise of conscience through the years, or ever be so ugly as to judge another soul, to put my greed and selfishness ahead of self-control, or dwell upon the negative, or wait for life to prove that everything would go my way before I dared to move. She didn't wish me money, and she didn't wish me fame. She didn't care if throngs of people ever knew my name. She gave her final prayer that I might finally arrive, in faith that I could make it, find the truth, and come alive. I'd looked into another's eyes, I'd trust and really see. I'd do for just one person what my great aunt did for me. I thought I heard a car pull up, and then I checked the clock. I had to start my pile of work, and then there came a knock. The door was double locked. I clicked the latch and slid the bolt. The wood was swollen, but I popped it open with a jolt. A rush of crystal air, a silhouette against the sky, a hush. A pair of eyes met mine. A gentle voice said, "Hi." Come in," I laughed the words. I took a hand in mine, and then it felt like Christmas, and the lights began to shine. The bells began to ring again, and spices filled the air. And all I knew of time was that the time was ours to share. I took 2 cups, I smiled, and when I saw a smile for me, we settled back together for a cup of Christmas tea. Thank you for joining us for our tea party today. We hope you enjoyed your time with us. From all of the staff at Alexander Hamilton Memorial Free Library, we wish you a Merry Christmas. May all of your days be happy and bright. We look forward to seeing you in 2022 for some wonderful programs. Until then, as always, stay safe, be healthy, and have a wonderful week.